Who doesn't love a boxed zipper pouch? There are so many things that you can use these for, so many things that you can put in them. Sewing supplies, cosmetics, toiletry items when you're traveling, craft supplies, and crochet supplies. Whatever you like to use a bag for. I'm Jan Howell. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm all about showing you all kinds of tips and tricks for your DIY projects to make them a little easier, less stressful, and more enjoyable. In this beginner-friendly sewing tutorial today, I'm going to show you how you can make one of these boxy zippered pouches. Now, I know there's a lot of different versions of how to make one of these, but I have refined my pattern and I've tried to make this process as easy as possible for you. Make sure you watch the whole video because I'm going to show you some great tips and things that will save you some time, save you some steps, and hopefully make it less confusing. There's no need for bias tape, and I'm going to show you how you can make the lining without any exposed seams. If you're feeling a little intimidated about the process of putting a zipper in, no worries. I used to feel the same way, and once I started putting zippers in, it's one of the funnest things that I enjoy when I'm sewing. I'm going to show you step by step how to do this and show you some fun ways to embellish your boxy pouches. So don't be afraid. Get out your sewing machine and let's get started. Let's start out by going over the materials and items and things that you'll need to make your zipper pouch. The pattern comes in 3 different sizes. I'm going to show you how to make the larger bag. There's also a medium-sized bag and a small-sized bag. And for those of you who like to have a printed pattern, I will put a link in the description below where you can get that. You'll need either fabric clips. I really enjoy using these clips for most of my sewing projects. And you'll need some straight pins. Some kind of measuring device, since we will be cutting out some squares on this project, or rectangles. I like this small little ruler, but you can use a seam gauge, whatever. You'll need some kind of marking device. I like this heat activated pen that disappears when you press it or have an iron touch it. If you are needing to apply the zipper pull, this zipper gadget works really well. You can do this without it. I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. If you want to add a D-ring to your tabs, this is a 1-inch D-ring I'm going to add to this. To cut out the pieces, I really find a rotary cutter and a mat helpful to get those straight corners. And if you don't have a rotary cutter yet, I really suggest you get one. It makes things so much easier and they're not that much money. Pair of fabric scissors. You'll need your sewing machine, of course, an iron, and an ironing board. You'll want to find your zipper foot that comes with your machine, and this is what they'll look like. If you haven't used the zipper foot, I'll show you how to do that. Most machines will come with a zipper foot. If you want to add a little tag or embellish it with some kind of applique, I'll be showing you how to do that. If you haven't watched my tutorial on how to make your own labels and tags, I'll put the link in the description below where you can watch that tutorial and get a PDF printout. And don't forget a seam ripper. Now, even I use this on most of my projects. There's times where you just sew things a little wonky or you need to do a little unpicking. Don't be concerned about it. Get yourself a good seam ripper and don't be afraid to use it. You will need an outer fabric and a lining. I like to use just regular quilted cotton. You don't want to use any fabric that's too bulky. You can make them with a bulkier fabric, maybe such as denim or corduroy. You won't need to use a stabilizer to make the fabric have a little bit more structure to it. So you can use those fabrics, but I'm going to show you how to use just regular quilter's cotton. I have cut out 2 pieces of the outer fabric piece and 2 pieces the same size of the lining. And you'll cut those out 14.5 by 10.5. I'm going to put a lightweight interfacing on the outside fabric, and on the inner fabric I'm going to use a fusible fleece. Now I know there's some patterns out there that you'll just use the fusible fleece on one side, or maybe both the lining and the outer fabric. But I have found when I use the fusible fleece on the outside of a zippered bag or pouch that you kind of get this wrinkly look to it. And I'm not a big fan of that, so I've been exploring, and I think I like to use a lightweight to medium stabilizer. It's an iron-on interfacing that gives it a little more structure, but it doesn't give the bulk, and it has a nice smooth finish when you use it. And that stabilizer and the interfacing will be cut the same size, which is 14.5 by 10.5. If you want to make a handle, which is optional, on your zipper pouch, you'll need to cut just one piece, 7 by 3.5 inches. And for the tabs, you'll cut one piece, 4.5 by 2 inches, and then we'll be cutting that in half to make 2 tabs. You're going to need a zipper, of course, and you can use any kind of zipper. I like to use zipper by the yard. As you can see, I have a pretty good stash of zippers. You can use an upcycled zipper, or these particular zippers are by the yard, and they also come with the zipper pulls of different colors, which is kind of fun. You can use a regular zipper that you get from the store, but you'll want that zipper to be, depending on what size you're making, it only needs to be 1 inch bigger than your outside and your lining pieces. So I'm going to get a zipper that's 16 inches or cut one to 16 inches. For this pouch, I thought it would be fun to add a ring pull, which you can get online. I'll put the links for these things in the description. Or you can just use the zipper pull that it comes with, or choose a zipper pull, the color that you want. So now that we've got that taken care of, let's get into the project and start making these pouches. Let's start by putting on the interfacing and the fleece. Right side of the fabric facing down, the bumpy side of the interfacing facing down onto the wrong side, and press that in place. So I'm just going to spot hit it here and there to adhere to it a little bit, and then I'm going to flip it over and iron from the front side. You can use the steam. These bigger pieces, I'm going to switch over to my larger iron. This little one will come in handy later, and I'll show you how that works. The fusible fleece will have a bumpy side with the glue on it and a really soft side. Bumpy side goes down. If you do want to add some kind of label or something to the front of the bag, we're going to find the center point. And you can barely see those pressed lines, and I'm going to center my label. This is a label that I printed out from a piece of artwork that I did, a watercolor print, and I have added Wonder Under to the back side and peeled off the paper. I am going to sew this, but some labels you do not want to put a pin hole in it because it will stay there. So that's good enough to tack it down, and then I'll go to the sewing machine and sew just 1/8 of an inch around that label. I've applied my label, and I'll set that aside for a minute while we make our handle and our tabs. I'm going to fold it in half lengthwise. Fold the bottom edge up to that crease. Fold the top edge down to the crease. And then fold it in half. And we'll do the same thing for the tabs. Before you cut that in half, go to the sewing machine and top stitch 1/8 of an inch on each folded edge. We'll do that for the handle as well. Whenever I top stitch, I like to change my length stitch to a 3 instead of a 2.5. And I'm going to hold the top thread for the first couple stitches so I don't have nesting underneath with the thread. And there's no need to back stitch. My handle and my tabs have been top stitched. I'll set those aside. If you're using a regular zipper, you can forward to the next part of the video. If you are going to add some kind of zipper pull, let me show you how to use this cool little gadget. I'm going to start by just pulling that bottom edge open a little bit. Take your gadget. The zipper pull will have a round edge and a flat edge. We want the round edge to be at the top, and that's where we're going to thread, but we're going to face it backwards. Put it on the gadget here. There's a number 3 and a number 5. This is a number 3. Place it on the gadget like that. Since this is facing backwards, we're going to find the back side of the zipper, which is more fabric than zipper teeth. Zipper teeth facing forward, and the idea is to thread these through at the same rate so that they'll be flat and not have any puckers in it. And it may take a couple times to get it, because those teeth have to line up just right. Lift it off, and let's see how we're doing. So you can see that these are even. If you've got it on wrong, one side will be more prominent, that little gouge out to the side, and the zipper will actually be crooked. I'm going to pull the zipper tab up to the middle of the zipper and just leave it there for now. Okay, let's put the zipper on. I'm going to take the front piece, place the right side facing up, take the zipper, place it right side facing down, and there's no need to really we're going to skip the step of finding the center point right now. You really don't need to do that. I'll show you another step to make sure that we're getting our two pieces lined up. So I'm going to line up that top edge, make sure you have some space on both edges. That's why I like getting a zipper that's a little bit longer. To make sure that these are lined up, I'm just going to draw a line where the edge of the fabric is on my zipper. And take the lining piece, line it up with that edge and the top edge, and start placing some pins in there. Or you can use clips. I like to use pins for this part. It just keeps it nice and secure. And you want to check to see if the pieces are lining up down at the bottom. And sometimes what tends to happen when you're sewing the zipper on is where you start, the bottom piece sometimes feeds through the machine a little quicker, and so it's not lined up by the time you get to the end of the zipper. That's why I apply a lot of pins. And you can make sure you're taking those out as you sew. All right, that one is ready. We're going to go ahead and sew down using our zipper foot along the edge there. So the zipper foot has these little places where you can attach it to your machine. And depending on which side of the zipper you're sewing on, I'm going to put it on this left 2 spaces. So it's really important that you're seeing all layers. The lining, the top of the zipper, and the front piece. My zipper foot is going to ride, this edge is going to ride along the zipper teeth. And if you need to adjust the needle position to the left or the right, you can do that. But my machine, when I put that presser foot down, it's riding against there 1/4 inch to 1/8 of an inch. And you'll want to backstitch at the beginning and at the end. Of course, you want to take the pins out as you sew. Now, when you can feel the zipper pull underneath, I'm going to leave my needle in the down position, lift up the presser foot, lift up that top layer, and pull my zipper towards the other side. And bring it back together. Make sure everything's lined up and continue sewing. Let's just check and see how that's aligned. Looks good. And looks good. Okay, this is what it'll look like. Now we're ready to put the other side on. I'm going to bring those together like that. Wrong sides together. Just finger press your fabric. We'll press it in just a minute. Take the lining, other lining piece, place it right side facing up. Align the edge. Make sure the side fabrics are lined up, and then take the top piece. We're making our little sandwich again and pin it in place. Go to the other side. Take it to the sewing machine and sew down the seam just like we did before using your zipper foot. All right, let's open that up. So now we have the lining pieces. Let's open it up to the front. I'm going to finger press just that flat, and then we're going to press it. Press this edge. Make sure everything's pulled back. I'm going to leave my zipper foot on, hold the top thread. I'm going to change my length to a 3 instead of a 2.5 in length, just for a more professional look of top stitching. You can trim off that excess zipper now. I'm going to use a pair of paper scissors, and you might need to just cut around those teeth a little bit, zigzag a little bit to get that straight. Grab your zipper tab, fold it in half, and then cut it in half. Now you have two. Fold it, and we're going to put the folded edge towards the center of the bag and center that on the zipper and the edge here and clip it in place. If you want to add a D-ring to the tab, this is the time to do that. And all you do is slip that through, bring the ends together and clip it in place just like you did on the other side. And then we'll go to the sewing machine and baste that in place. I'm going to change presser feet. We no longer need the zipper foot. Put my regular foot back on. I'm not going to use the full 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to do like a 1/4 inch, really close to the edge. You don't need a back stitch. When you're sewing over a zipper, just go slow so it doesn't break your needle. Bring the two outside pieces together, line up the bottom edges, and clip it in place. Bring the lining pieces together, line up the bottom edge, and take it to the sewing machine using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Sew all the way down. No need to leave a gap in the lining for turning. This is one of the tricks that I'm going to teach you in just a minute. I'm going to turn my stitch length back to a 2.5, back stitch at the beginning and at the end of the seam. The next thing that we'll do is open up the panels like this, and we're going to center and press this bottom seam open and align it with the zipper. So I'm not pressing on the zipper tab. I like to just pull it aside of the zipper to get that seam open. Flip it over and do the other side. I like to finger press it first. I'm going to grab a piece of masking tape and pull that D-ring out of the way and just tape it down for now. I don't want to take a chance of that flinging over and breaking a needle. Find the center seam, bring it in line with the center of the tab, then bring the lining bottom seam lined up, pin or clip it in place. Same thing on the other side. I'm only going to clip this portion and then give it another really good press. This is how we're going to make the boxy corners. We're going to take a ruler. I like this ruler because you can really get that squared corner that we need. Could just take a regular ruler, measure over, and then measure up. Here's a tip for when you're cutting out the notches for your box corners. take your ruler, and I like to use some masking tape or painter's tape so that it's easy on my eyes and I can just quickly, without having to count or figure out where that line is. This is for the large bag, and the measurements for that notch is 2 5/8 by 2 1/4. So it is a little wider than tall, that notch that we're cutting out, and there's a reason for that. We're adding in the seam allowance. So instead of trying to figure out and try to find those lines, this just makes it real quick. So if you are using 1 inch by 1 inch and 3/8, you could mark that with a tape with the other sizes. But see how I can just quickly line that up with the tape edges and mark the box. See how easy that is? And it's easy to get confused when you're moving to the next corner, and you might need to flip your ruler over and mark that out. Oh, so much easier than trying to sit and count. And if you're like me, I like to make things simpler and easier on my eyes. So I hope that's helpful. Take your fabric scissor and cut along those lines. You can do both layers at once if you want, and that will save time drawing on both sides. All right, these are clipped in place. Now all we're going to do is sew 3/8 of an inch right down this side and along this edge. Now take your time. We're sewing over a lot of layers right here. If you feel like if there's a lot of bulk, you can use a hump jumper, which will make sure that it's not skipping stitches there in the thick part. So as soon as I notice my presser foot tilting up, I'm going to lift up the presser foot and slide this hump jumper underneath, or you can use just a folded up piece of cardboard or something just to raise up the back of that presser foot and continue sewing. I'm going to make sure my seam allowance stay flat. And if you need to slide it as you sew, you can do that. And I'm going to bring the hump jumper to the front to keep that level. Before I move on, I'm going to check and see what that looks like. Make sure my tabs are lined up. Looks good. And then we'll do the other side. If you're making the smaller sizes, especially the very small size, I wouldn't put stabilizer on your lining. It will make turning this a lot easier, and you really don't need that bulk on the little sizes. So I'm going to open up the lining, little gap here. I'm going to start turning it right side facing out. And I'll turn the outer fabric to the outside. Now this is what I love this little travel size iron for. It can get into these little places. I'm going to go back and press that bottom seam allowance open, make sure that it's flat. And what I love about this method is you don't have that awkward little gap that you have to sew together. It's just done. Okay, I'm going to press that now. Doesn't look really nice. Okay, I'm going to press this seam open as well. Now this is where we're going to add the handle if you want to. So I'm going to put it on the opposite end that I have the D-ring on. Take the handle, center it on that seam, clip it in place, and just like we did our tabs, I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, baste it in place. Now we're going to sew the box corners. You're going to pull those edges out so the corners are at the edge, line up this fabric, trim off any extra fabric that you need to, and clip it in place. Do that for all 4 sides. We'll take it to the sewing machine and sew down this edge using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to trim those seams down to like 1/8 of an inch. We're going to flip the lining back out. I forgot to mention that you'll need a turning stick or some kind of point turner to poke out those corners. Now you can see that I didn't catch that part of the lining in the seam. So you'll want to, before you do anything else, is check that. That's real easy to do with all the layers that we're working with. So it looks like that is the only issue. So all you need to do is flip that, find out where that was. There it is. I'm going to flip that back in, and I know that that end, the lining didn't quite catch, so I'm going to take that seam just a little bit wider. All right, so I fixed that seam. You'll want to clip off any threads because those will poke out in our seams. I think I've done that with all of them. Let's poke out the corners. Now we're going to just press those seams open as much as you can. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine and sew it one more time. This is pretty much just a French seam we're making. And you want this seam to cover the cut edge, so we're going to go in a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And you will be back stitching. All right, should we see what it looks like when we flip the right side out? If you have any straggly threads that are hanging out here, clip those off. So there you have it, a boxed zipper pouch, enclosed seams, and you put a zipper in. It wasn't that bad, was it? Such a fun project. If you like this tutorial, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to find more patterns and other DIY projects, check out my website, youmakeitsimple.com. If you have issues or questions when you're sewing up your boxy zipper pouch, leave a message in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. Have a wonderful day, have fun sewing, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.